How identity becomes a trap. A woman sits across from her manager during her annual review. The manager says her work is solid, consistent, reliable. Then he pauses and says, "But I wonder if you're holding yourself back. You're so detail-oriented. Maybe too detail-oriented. Have you thought about being more strategic?" She nods. She writes it down. Later that week, she stops double-checking her reports before sending them. She tries to speak up more in meetings. She focuses on the big picture. 3 months later, the same manager pulls her aside. "I'm getting feedback that your work feels rushed lately, and some of the details are slipping." "That's not like you. Is everything okay?" She feels confused. She was trying to do what he asked. He says, "I think you're strongest when you're thorough. That's your thing. Let's get back to that." She agrees. She goes back to checking her work carefully. She speaks less in meetings. She focuses on the details again. A year passes. Another review. The manager says, "You're great at what you do, but I'm not sure you're ready for the next level. You're very in the weeds. I need someone who can think bigger." She feels stuck. She tried to change. He told her to go back. Now he's saying she should have changed after all. What she doesn't realize is that the problem was never about detail versus strategy. The problem is that her role has been defined. And once a role is defined, every action gets interpreted through that definition. No matter what she does, it confirms what people already believe about who she is. This is how identity becomes a trap. What identity means here. Identity is not what you think about yourself. It is what others expect from you based on the role you occupy in a system. It forms through repetition. Someone does a certain kind of task, they do it again. Others begin to rely on them for that task. Over time, the task becomes attached to the person. The person becomes the one who does that thing. At first, this feels neutral. It might even feel good. You are needed. You are known for something. People come to you. But the role starts to harden. What began as something you did becomes something you are. And once that happens, the system stops seeing you as capable of doing anything else. This is not about stereotypes. It is not about bias in the usual sense. It is about how roles stabilize groups. Every group needs predictability. It needs to know who does what. Identity is how the group creates that predictability. The trap is that you cannot simply choose a different identity. The group has to allow it. And the group resists change because change creates uncertainty. How the role gets assigned. Identity starts with a small difference. Someone is good at spreadsheets. They build one that helps the team. The next time someone needs a spreadsheet, they ask that person. The person agrees. It is easier to ask someone who has done it before than to figure it out yourself. The pattern repeats. The person keeps building spreadsheets. Other people stop learning how. The person becomes the spreadsheet person. No one decided this formally. No one said, "You are now the spreadsheet person and nothing else." But the role exists. Everyone knows it. And once it exists, it shapes how people interpret everything that person does. If the spreadsheet person speaks up in a meeting about strategy, someone might think, "That's interesting, but they're more of a details person." If they suggest a new direction, someone might think, "Let's hear from someone with a wider view." The role creates a filter. Everything the person does gets sorted into two categories. things that fit the role and things that do not. Things that fit get taken seriously. Things that do not get dismissed or reinterpreted. This happens in families too. One child is the responsible one. Another is the creative one. Another is the difficult one. These roles do not come from personality. They come from early patterns that get reinforced over time. The responsible child does their homework without being asked. The parent notices. The parent stops checking. The child keeps doing their homework. The parent starts asking them to help with younger siblings. The child becomes the one who helps. The role hardens. Years later, the responsible child tries to take a risk. They want to drop out of college and travel. The family reacts with confusion. That's not like you. Are you sure you've thought this through? The family is not trying to control them. The family is trying to make sense of behavior that does not match the role. The person is not being judged. They are being categorized, and categories are hard to escape. How communication changes once the role exists. Once a role is assigned, communication splits into two tracks. On one track, the person speaks. On the other track, the role speaks. The listener hears both. But the role is louder. A junior employee suggests a new way to structure client meetings. The senior employee hears the suggestion, but they also hear the role. The junior employee is new. They do not have context. Their job is to learn, not to redesign. The senior employee says, "That's an interesting idea. Let me think about it." They do not think about it. The suggestion disappears. The same suggestion from a peer would be taken seriously. The same suggestion from a senior leader would be implemented immediately. The words are identical. The role changes everything. This is not about respect. The senior employee is not dismissing the junior employee as a person. They are dismissing the suggestion because it came from the wrong role. The system has rules about who gets to propose changes. The junior employee is not in that category yet. The junior employee does not know this. They think the suggestion was not good enough. They try again. They make their next suggestion more detailed. They add research. They anticipate objections. The senior employee says, "You're overthinking this. Just focus on your own work for now." The junior employee feels confused. They were told to be thorough. Now they are being told to pull back. They do not realize the problem is not the quality of the suggestion. The problem is the role. The same thing happens in reverse. A senior leader makes a casual comment in a meeting. "Maybe we should rethink how we do onboarding." The comment is vague. There is no plan, no research, no detail. But because it came from a senior leader, people treat it as important. Someone volunteers to put together a proposal. Someone else schedules a follow-up meeting. The leader might not even remember making the comment. But the system heard the role and responded. The words matter less than the position of the speaker. How people can misread what is happening. The woman from the opening believes the problem is her. She thinks she is not good enough at strategy, or not good enough at details, or not good enough at reading what her manager wants. She does not see that the problem is structural. Her manager does not have a clear picture of what he wants. What he has is a picture of who she is, and that picture is based on the role she has occupied. When she tries to change, the manager experiences cognitive dissonance. The behavior does not match the role. The manager's brain tries to resolve the mismatch. It does this by reinterpreting the behavior. If she focuses on details, The manager thinks, good, she's back to being herself. If she focuses on strategy, the manager thinks, she's trying too hard. She's not comfortable here. Maybe she should stick to what she's good at. The manager is not lying. He genuinely believes he is giving her useful feedback. He does not realize he is reinforcing a role that prevents her from changing. She believes the feedback is about her performance. It is not. It is about the role. But she cannot see the role. She can only see her own actions. So she keeps adjusting her actions, hoping that the right combination will work. It will not work. Because the role is not determined by her actions, it is determined by how others interpret her actions. And they interpret her actions through the role. This is why people feel trapped. They are doing everything they are told to do. They are following the feedback. They are trying to grow. But nothing changes. The role stays the same. They think they are failing. They are not failing. The system is holding them in place. How roles spread across contexts. Roles do not stay in one area. They bleed into other areas. A man is quiet in meetings at work. He listens more than he speaks. His manager interprets this as lack of confidence. The manager starts to manage him more closely. The manager asks for more updates. The manager checks in more often. The man notices the increased attention. He interprets it as doubt. He starts to second-guess himself. He asks more questions before acting. He waits for approval before moving forward. The manager sees this behavior and thinks, he really does need more support. I was right to check in more. The man becomes the person who needs support. This was not true at the beginning, but it is true now. The role created the behavior. The man goes home. His partner asks him to make a decision about their vacation. He hesitates. He says, "What do you think we should do?" The partner says, "I thought you were excited about this trip. Why are you asking me?" The man does not know. The role has followed him home. He has started to believe he is not good at making decisions, even though this was never true. Even though he made decisions easily before the role formed, roles are contagious. They spread from one context to another because they change how people see themselves. The man is no longer playing the role at work. He has internalized it. It has become part of his identity. This is the deepest part of the trap. The role was assigned by others. But eventually, the person assigns it to themselves. How the trap closes. The trap closes when the person stops trying to change the role and starts trying to succeed within it. The woman from the opening stops trying to be strategic. She accepts that she is a details person. She tries to be the best details person she can be. She becomes meticulous. She catches errors no one else sees. She becomes indispensable. Her manager praises her. "You're so good at this. I don't know what we'd do without you." She feels good. The praise is real. The value is real. But the role is now locked. She cannot move up because moving up requires a different role, and the system cannot imagine her in a different role. She starts to resent the praise. It feels like a cage, but she cannot explain why. The praise is sincere. The work is important. She is good at it. What is the problem? The problem is that success within the role prevents escape from the role. The better she gets at being the details person, the harder it is for anyone to see her as anything else. This happens in relationships too. One person becomes the planner. The other becomes the spontaneous one. The planner makes the reservations. The planner researches the vacation. The planner keeps the calendar. At first, this feels efficient. It is easier to let one person handle logistics. But over time, the planner starts to feel burdened. They wish the other person would take initiative. The other person has stopped taking initiative, not because they are lazy, but because the role has been assigned. When they do try to plan something, the planner says, "Did you check the weather? Did you make sure the place takes our credit card? Did you read the reviews?" The spontaneous person feels criticized. They stop trying. The planner feels abandoned. They take over again. The roles harden. Both people are trapped. The planner cannot stop planning without feeling like things will fall apart. The spontaneous person cannot start planning without being corrected. The roles are now self-sustaining. How misinterpretation deepens the trap. The trap gets worse because people interpret behavior as personality instead of role. The quiet man at work is seen as naturally reserved. His manager does not think, "I am managing him in a way that makes him hesitant." The manager thinks he is a hesitant person. The detail-oriented woman is seen as naturally cautious. Her manager does not think, "I have assigned her to a role that requires caution." The manager thinks, "She is a cautious person." This misinterpretation makes change almost impossible. If the behavior is personality, then the person needs to change their personality. But personality is hard to change, so the person stays stuck. If the behavior is role, then the system needs to change, but the system does not see itself as the cause. The system sees the person as the cause. So the system does nothing. The person tries harder, they read books about confidence, they practice speaking up. They work on being more strategic. None of it works, because the problem is not inside them. The problem is in how the system interprets them. A teenager is labeled as the difficult child in their family. They push back against rules. They argue. They ask why. The parents interpret this as defiance. They respond with more rules, more consequences, more control. The teenager pushes back harder. The parents say, "See? This is what we're dealing with. They're impossible." The parents do not see that their response is creating the behavior. They see the behavior as proof of the child's personality. The child starts to believe it too. "I guess I'm just difficult." The role becomes identity, and once identity forms, it is very hard to separate behavior from role. How feedback loops lock the role in place. Roles sustain themselves through feedback loops. The detail-oriented woman is given tasks that require attention to detail. She does them well. Her manager gives her more of those tasks. She gets better at them. Her manager gives her even more. She is now so busy with detail work that she has no time to work on strategy. When a strategic project comes up, the manager gives it to someone else. She's too busy. And honestly, strategy isn't really her strength. The woman never gets a chance to develop strategic skills. Not because she lacks ability, but because the role prevents practice. And without practice, the skills do not develop. And without the skills, the role stays in place. This is not unique to work. It happens in families. It happens in friendships. It happens in classrooms. A student is labeled as not good at math. The teacher seats them in the back. The teacher does not call on them during math lessons. The teacher gives them easier problems. The student falls further behind. The teacher says, "See?" They're just not a math person. The label created the outcome, but the outcome is interpreted as proof of the label. The student internalizes the label. They stop trying. They say, I'm not good at math. They avoid math in the future. The role follows them through school, through college, through career choices. A label assigned at age 8 determines options at age 30. This is how identity becomes permanent. How breaking the role requires external permission. The person cannot break the role alone. The role exists in the system. The system has to allow the change. The woman who wants to move from details to strategy needs her manager to give her strategic work. But the manager will not give her strategic work until she proves she can do it. But she cannot prove she can do it without being given the work. This is a closed loop. She is stuck. Breaking the loop requires someone with power to take a risk, to assign work that does not match the role, to interpret behavior in a new way, to say, I know this isn't what you usually do, but I think you can handle it. Most managers will not take this risk. Not because they are cruel, but because assigning work that does not match the role creates uncertainty. What if the person fails? What if the project suffers? It is easier to give the work to someone who already fits the role. The same thing happens in relationships. One person wants to stop being the planner. They want their partner to take the lead. But the partner has learned not to plan. The partner expects to be corrected. The partner waits for instructions. The planner cannot stop planning and hope the partner will step up. The partner will not step up until they are given space and trust. But the planner cannot give space and trust without risking that nothing will get done. Someone has to go first, and going first requires power. The person in the role does not have the power to go first. They can only respond to the system. The system has to change its expectations. This is why people stay trapped. They are waiting for permission to change. But the system is waiting for proof that they have changed. No one goes first. How people confuse the trap with identity crisis. When people feel stuck in a role, they often think they are having an identity crisis. They think they do not know who they are. They think they need to find themselves. This is not what is happening. They know who they are. The problem is that the system will not let them be who they are. The woman knows she is capable of strategy. The quiet man knows he is capable of making decisions. The teenager knows they are not just difficult, but the system keeps telling them otherwise. They start to doubt themselves. They think, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I really am just a details person. Maybe I really do need more support. Maybe I really am difficult. The doubt is not coming from inside. It is coming from the repeated experience of being interpreted through a role. Over time, the external interpretation becomes internal belief. This is why therapy often fails to solve the problem. Therapy focuses on the person. It tries to help them understand themselves better. It tries to build their confidence. It tries to help them change their behavior. But the problem is not in the person. The problem is in the system. The person can change their behavior. They can build their confidence. They can understand themselves perfectly, and the role will still be there, because the role is maintained by others. Therapy can help the person see the role. It can help them understand that they are not the problem, but it cannot change the role. Only the system can change the role. How new environments reveal that the role was never true. Sometimes people change environments, they change jobs, they move to a new city, they leave a relationship, and suddenly the role disappears. The detail-oriented woman takes a job at a new company. Her new manager does not know her history. The manager gives her a strategic project. She does it well. The manager gives her more. She becomes known as a strategic thinker. She is the same person. She has the same skills, but the role is different because the system is different. This is proof that the role was never about her. It was about how the old system interpreted her. The new system does not have that interpretation, so it sees her differently. The quiet man leaves his job. He starts his own business. Suddenly, he has to make decisions constantly. He makes them. He is good at it. He wonders why he ever thought he was bad at making decisions. He was never bad at making decisions. The old system treated him as if he were. And he internalized that treatment. The teenager goes to college. They meet new people who do not know their family history. The new people do not see them as difficult. The teenager relaxes. They stop arguing. They stop pushing back. They are easier to be around. Their family visits. Within hours, the teenager is arguing again. The family says, "You haven't changed at all." But the teenager has changed. The role just reappears when the old system is present. This is how people learn that identity is not fixed. It is context dependent. The same person can occupy different roles in different systems. The role feels like identity, but it is not. It is a position in a structure. How to recognize when you are in the trap. Now, you know you are in the trap when you keep trying to change and nothing works. You ask for feedback. You follow the feedback. You get different feedback. You follow that. You get the first feedback again. You feel like you are moving in circles. You know you are in the trap when other people are surprised by your skills. Someone sees you do something well. They say, "I didn't know you could do that. You have been doing it the whole time." But they did not notice because it did not fit the role. You know you are in the trap when you feel like you have to prove yourself over and over. You show competence. People forget. You show it again. People forget again. No matter how many times you demonstrate ability, it does not stick. Because the role is stronger than the evidence. You know you are in the trap when leaving the situation feels like the only option. You have tried to change from the inside. You have spoken up. You have asked for different work. You have changed your behavior. Nothing has shifted. The role is still there. The only way out is to go somewhere the role does not exist. How the trap shapes what people believe about themselves. The deepest damage of the trap is not that it limits options. It is that it changes self-concept. The woman starts to believe she is not strategic. The quiet man starts to believe he is not decisive. The teenager starts to believe they are difficult. The role becomes internalized. This happens through repetition. Every time the woman tries to be strategic and is redirected to details, she receives a message. The message is, "You are not good at strategy." She does not hear the message once. She hears it dozens of times, hundreds of times. Eventually, the message sinks in. She stops trying. Not because she is lazy, not because she is afraid, but because she genuinely believes the message is true. The belief is not based on evidence. She has never been given a real chance to be strategic, but the belief feels true because it has been reinforced so many times. This is how identity traps create lasting damage. The person leaves the situation. The role is gone, but the belief remains. The belief follows them into the next situation. It shapes what they try, what they avoid, what they think they are capable of. They carry the trap with them even after they have escaped it. How systems benefit from stable roles. The trap persists because systems benefit from it. When roles are stable, the system runs smoothly. Everyone knows what to expect. There is no confusion about who does what. Tasks get done. The group functions. Changing roles creates disruption. If the detail-oriented woman becomes strategic, someone else has to do the detail work. The manager has to reassign tasks. Other people have to adjust. The system has to reorganize. The system resists this, not because it is cruel, but because change is costly. It requires effort, it requires uncertainty. It is easier to keep roles stable. The same thing happens in families. Roles create predictability. The responsible child is reliable. The creative child is fun. The difficult child is the one who gets blamed when things go wrong. These roles make the family easier to manage. If the difficult child stops being difficult, the family loses a scapegoat. Now the family has to face problems it was avoiding. It has to look at its own dynamics. It is easier to keep the difficult child in the difficult role. The system is not evil. It is not trying to hurt people. It is trying to maintain stability. But stability often comes at the cost of individual growth. Why escaping the trap feels like betrayal. When someone tries to break out of a role, the system experiences it as betrayal. The responsible child decides to stop taking care of everyone. The family feels abandoned. What's wrong with you? Why are you being so selfish? The detail-oriented woman starts speaking up about strategy. Her manager feels challenged. I need you focused on what you're good at. We have other people for strategy. The planner stops planning. The partner feels lost. Why aren't you handling this? You always handle this. The person trying to change feels guilty. They are not doing anything wrong. They are just trying to occupy a different role. But the system interprets it as abandonment, as rejection, as failure to fulfill an obligation. The guilt is powerful. It pulls the person back into the role. They think, maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just do what I'm good at. Maybe this is who I really am. They return to the role. The system stabilizes. Everyone feels relieved. The trap closes again. How to think about behavior. When you see the trap, when you see someone stuck in a role, do not interpret their behavior as personality. The person who is always cautious might not be cautious by nature. They might be cautious because every time they take a risk, they are criticized. The caution is a response, not a trait. The person who never speaks up might not be shy. They might have learned that their input is not valued. The silence is a response, not a trait. The person who is always difficult might not be difficult. They might be the only one naming problems that everyone else is avoiding. The difficulty is a response, not a trait. When you see the trap, you stop blaming the person. You start looking at the system. What is the system asking of this person? What happens when they try to do something different? Who benefits from keeping them in this role? These questions reveal the structure. And once you see the structure, you stop seeing the behavior as personal failure. You see it as rational adaptation to an irrational situation. Closing reflection. You walk into a meeting. Someone is speaking. You notice that people are not really listening. They are waiting for someone else to speak. The person keeps talking. But the room has already moved on. You realize the person is in a role. And the role is not person with good ideas. The role is something else. Maybe person who talks too much. Maybe person who doesn't get it. Maybe person we have to be patient with. The person does not know this. They think they are contributing. They do not see that their words are being filtered through a role that dismisses them before they finish speaking. You see this everywhere now. In your family, in your workplace, in your friend group. People stuck in roles they did not choose. Roles that others assigned. Roles that shape what they try, what they believe about themselves, what they think they are allowed to want. You realize that most of what people call personality is actually role. And most of what people call choice is actually response to how others have categorized them. Identity is not something you discover. It is something that gets built through interaction, through repetition, through the slow accumulation of moments, when others tell you who you are by how they respond to you. The trap is not that you do not know yourself. The trap is that others think they know you. And their certainty becomes your cage,